Hello and welcome back to this week's episode. So we're going to talk about money, and I've been doing an entire series on money lately. So if you haven't checked out all my other videos before you watch this one, I highly recommend you check out those. So today we're going to talk about how to stop letting money create so much stress in your life, because let's be real, so many of us experience stress as the primary emotion around our money. And why is that? I want to talk to you about what causes that stress, how to stop letting the stress actually take over your experience with money, and we're also going to talk about why money has this chokehold on us that we know exists, and yet we have no clue how to break out of that chokehold. So we're going to talk about that today. And if you stick around until the end, I'm also going to be talking to you about the valuation system that you use right now that you are completely unaware of, that's actually keeping you in the cycle of constant stress and friction with money. And this is affecting how you can create effortlessness and ease and abundance with money. It's the reason why you maybe have experienced stress around money your whole life, and how you're going to break out of it. I'm going to show you the opposing valuation system and framework to begin to use and start applying in your life today, and living through that lens and interacting with money from that lens will in fact change your experience with money from stress to abundance and ease. So stick around for that until the end. Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Nicole, a life and business coach for high functioning women. I'm a self-proclaimed foodie, content creator, educator, and your new abundance bestie. In my world, we talk about all things to do with elevating your life. I post weekly videos helping the everyday woman embody her highest self, create inner wealth, master her mindset, unlock her femininity, and be an absolute boss in life. I create resources, trainings, and host experiences online and in person in order to help you reconnect to your true self. Not the one you think you need to be, but the you that you were born to be. So you can reclaim your power and amplify your voice to lead, love, and create as a woman. If you like my vibe and you want a little bit more abundance in your life, hit subscribe to be notified whenever I drop a new episode, and be sure to check out the free resources in the description below. Hey, I am Nicole, your flow-based life and business coach, and I am here to teach you all things about wealth creation and abundance. And I am so excited to talk to you this week about this topic that I feel like is just so relevant and so applicable to so many of us. And that is how to create less stress with money. Let's be real, so many of us grow up in a household, in a culture, in an environment that teaches us that money is completely stressful. There's no way that money will ever not be stressful. And I feel like for me, this was my story growing up, and I have spent the last 2 years really deconditioning those things and beliefs and those experiences with money. And I can't wait to be the person to guide you through that today as we completely reframe your relationship with money and change it from a stressful relationship to an effortless and abundant one. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to stop being stressed about money. So more specifically, we're going to cover these topics. Number one, we're going to break down what money actually is. What is money and what is its actual function? The second thing we're going to talk about is what is it about money that actually creates stress for us? So many of us have this friction around engaging with money. We don't really know exactly what it is that creates that friction. And just like with anything, if we can get clear on what it is about the money or about the problem that is creating stress and friction that we don't want, then we can begin to know a way out and strategize a way out. And so that's the second thing. We're going to dive into what it is about the money that's actually creating the stress. Number three, I'm going to show you the way of thinking and the lens that you've been viewing money in that's keeping you in that perpetual stress cycle versus the neutrality and the effortlessness and ease that you actually want to have with money. And number 4, I'm going to show you the framework and the way of thinking that you want to start applying and modeling today to begin to break yourself out of that stress cycle. And let's be real, this work is powerful. This work is deep. I personally grew up in a household and in a culture that taught me that money was always going to be stressful. Handling money, making money, spending money was always going to induce negative feelings and stress. And this is how I saw my parents relate to money. It's how I see a lot of people in my culture, in my socioeconomic environment, workplaces. So many of our unintentional observations in life end up becoming our conditioned beliefs, our learned beliefs about money. And a lot of that is to relate to money in a stressful way. But what happens when you relate to money or to anything in a way that you expect stress to come from it is you perpetuate more and more stress. And so many of us try to alleviate the stress and try to make money a neutral and fun thing in our lives so we can experience more of its goodness and abundance and call more of it in. And yet we don't have a clue how. We just try stuff. We try these mantras. We look for affirmations that feel good about money, or we try to like mindset our way through it, but we don't really understand like what is going on and why is there a lot of stress. And I believe that it comes with really peeling back those layers of what we have made money mean and why is it actually creating stress for us on this primitive like bodily level that is actually putting us into survival mode majority of the time when we engage with money. So I want to peel back the layers on that because I know for me, I've been doing this work for the last 2 years, really intentionally deconditioning my mind, my limiting beliefs around money, and it has really changed my life. And I believe that if you were to learn this today, you're going to have generational cycles be broken, cycles of poverty, scarcity, lack that have kept you in insufficiency and in this terrible, stressful place with money when it doesn't have to be that way. So you're in for a treat today. I'm so glad you could join me, and let's get into today's video. So point number 1, what is money? Money in its essence is a valuation system. It is a resource, like the physical money is a resource that we exchange and trade for access to things that we perceive that are of value to us. In its purest form, the word money is just a description for a resource that we trade. Back then, you would barter. You didn't have like gold coins or paper notes. You had something that you were willing to exchange of value to you in exchange for value that the other person was providing. So sometimes the exchange would actually be goods and services. And over time, humans eventually decided that we were going to create a form of representation like physical cash, physical dollar notes or dollar bills, and we evolved from there. Obviously, we have digital forms now. Back then, they had salt, they had, I don't know, they had everything, right? And that was a means. But in essence, right, the money form that we know it to be today is just a valuation system. It's a representation system. And what I want you to catch is if you wanted to access a certain resource, access a certain experience, then you would simply trade that commodity for access. And that's essentially all that money is. And so money in and of itself is actually valueless. It's the value that we place on the thing that we're actually accessing that allows us to then understand the value of what we are trading. So money is just a representation system of what we value. So a lot of people, when we say that money creates stress, what I want you to catch is that it's not the money that creates stress, right? The money is just a resource. It's just a commodity. The cash is just a thing that you hold, or the bank card is just a card, or the numbers in your bank account are just numbers on a screen, right? The fact that money can be stressful is really another way of saying I am feeling a certain emotion because of the thing that I experience when I interact with the resource, when I spend the resource, when I make the resource, when somebody stole the resource. So what we're actually experiencing around the money is not about the thing, it's about what surrounds the thing. And this is where you'll hear phrases like money is just a shadow. So let me explain that. We get to feel good about how we interact with money. And more often than not, the problem is not actually the money itself. The problem is whether we perceive we are worthy of receiving the money, or whether we are worthy of receiving the thing that the money is affording us. And sometimes we limit ourselves in our ability to experience the goodness of that exchange because we're more attached to the money than we are to the experience we're receiving. So this is where the problem arises, and this is where stress around money is created. So going on to number 2, what creates stress around money? It's not the actual money itself, because it's meaningless. We project the meaning onto the money, right? We project the meaning onto the value of an experience because it depends on how much we value it. And that will depend how much we're willing to pay for it, or if we're even willing to pay for it at all. And so here's the actual problem. Here's what's actually creating the stress. The stress that you feel around money is the attachment of your identity and validation to the losing or the having of the money. The problem is not the money itself. The problem is that you have attached your worthiness and your validation and your identity and your security on the money, instead of allowing yourself to feel secure, to know your identity, to feel validated, to know that you're going to be enough regardless, and then interacting with money in a neutral way. So many of us have our identities wrapped up in money, and we place that identity and security on the physical money. And that's why the exchanging of the money, when we interact with it, whether we're making it, having it, or spending it, can feel so full of friction and so stressful. But if money were completely neutral and we felt complete, whole, satisfied, content, sufficient, enough, if we felt all these things outside of the amount of money, then choosing to move around the money based on what we value or what we want to access would just feel really, really easy. It will feel really, really effortless because our identity is not attached to it, right? Often, one of the ways that I can kind of paint this picture is when somebody says,
"That is too expensive."
If you have a conversation with someone and you look at a single product and you find that they're like, "That's so affordable, that's so good," and then you're like, "That's so expensive," the reason why you both view it differently is because you have completely different contexts. You have completely different lenses that have informed whether you view something as cheap or expensive. And often we associate that viewpoint to how much money we have readily available, but that is not actually the truth. We often have money readily available, and yet we still say, "I can't afford that," or "That's too expensive." So it's not about how much money we have available or accessible. It's that we don't perceive its value the same way. So the person who says,
"That's really affordable, I'm willing to pay that, I can afford that, I can find a way to afford that,"
is someone who sees the value and is willing to give away or to exchange their resource of money or find a way to create money to pay for it. They see the value in it, and they are more willing to part with the money than to have and keep the money and to trade off the access to that experience. Whereas the person who is like, "That's too expensive, I can't afford that," may have more attachment to the money than they do to having and accessing the experience. So they won't find a way to afford it. They will just say, "I can't afford it." They will say it's too expensive instead of, "I just don't value it enough to find a way to make it work, to find a way to find the money." So I think that this is really important because we often play helpless and victim to the money in our bank accounts when we are very resourceful as human beings. And I just want to remind you, like, again, if you haven't watched a video on stop saying "I can't afford it" to yourself, definitely check that video out. I'll link it in the description below because that's going to really help you reframe this whole value perception thing, right? I really want you to understand that if you really did perceive the value in something, the ability to release money towards it will be quite effortless. And the reason for that is because your identity and your safety is not tied to the actual money itself. In fact, I experience this all the time. I see my clients do it all the time, where they see value in something and they are more than willing to spend $300 on a pair of shoes, but they won't spend $30 on a certain pastry, right? Because they don't value pastries. But for the foodie who doesn't care about shoes, she's gonna drop that $30 on the pastry just like that. She's not going to have the thought that's too expensive. She values that thing. And so she's willing to exchange the resources that she has. Now, there are other factors that come into play, like our attachment to money in terms of whether it feels safe to have lots of money or whether we feel safe not having lots of money. And these things are conditioned. These things are built through the messages that we also receive growing up about safety and where safety comes from, or the media and how it tells you that
You need to have XYZ things.
in order to feel like you have enough. So these things also factor into that identity piece, but this is something you really, really need to know when it comes to understanding that the problem is not the money inherently. If you are finding that there is friction in your life or stress in your life around money, I want you to stop making money the problem and to start asking yourself internally, where have I latched my identity, my validation, my sufficiency, my worthiness on the money itself, instead of creating that validation and sufficiency within myself and then interacting with money in a neutral way. So why do we feel bad about the money? Why does money actually create stress for us? Money creates stress for us because we have placed our value, our human need to be validated and to be worth and to be safe and to be abundant and enough on the money itself. So we struggle to part with the money anytime we are attached to it. And so I want you to catch this polarity, okay? Any resistance-free experience with money, so any time you engage with money or spend money in a very effortless way, it doesn't create stress for you, is a moment where you have been spending the money out of abundance. You have been interacting with the movement of money from a place of sufficiency and I am enough. The money is not attached to my identity. Anytime you feel stress, feel worry, or feel any negative emotion or friction around money, it's because you've been behaving and interacting with money from a place of lack, the opposite of abundance, the place of scarcity. And so when you are seeking money to serve you, to validate something in you, then it's going to be really hard to let go of it, because it's kind of like being so codependent on your partner that you can't be anywhere without them. Or when somebody asks you who you are, you don't say, I'm Nicole. You say,
Oh, I'm Jose's partner, Nicole.
because you identify with them rather than identifying as yourself, as a whole and beautiful human being on your own. And that's what happens. We have so many codependent relationships and threads to money because society, our conditioning, our upbringing has taught us that we are not anything unless we have money. And that is false. That is not true. If you start carrying yourself in a state of confidence, in a state of enoughness, then you will find that regardless how much money you have, money does not create stress for you to either make, have, or spend. If you want to take your abundance to another level, I want to help you. I'm a life and business coach for women who want to step into their next level by activating wealth from the inside out. To help you take your first step to unlocking true abundance and your aligned potential, I'm giving you free resources, workshops, and masterclasses that you can access on demand right now. Check out www.nicoleconception.co/free-resources to get your hands on it. For more videos like this, check out the other playlists and series I have on this channel, and don't forget to hit subscribe to be notified whenever I drop a new video. And if you're more of the podcast type, check out Freedom in Flow, where I dive even deeper into the concepts that will help you create less hustle and more flow, abundance, and alignment in your life and business. Now, if you're a reader, you'll want to subscribe to my email list for unfiltered, honest, and most importantly, applicable life upgrades. Now, don't be a stranger, connect with me on Instagram and TikTok and send me a message. I love getting to know you and your story. It's why I do this. Okay, my lovely, that's all for now. I'll see you soon. Signing off, Nicole.